Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. In today's video, I'm going to be continuing my experiments with Arteza dry erase lapboards, and this time I'm going to be using Arteza Pouring Acrylics. In my previous video, I found that the dry erase lapboards work really well with alcohol ink art and also with resin art, but I really wanted to see what would happen with the Arteza Pouring Acrylics. So when Arteza offered to send me some and have a go with them, I jumped at the chance and I just really wanted to see what would happen. Stay tuned to see the results and to see how versatile the Arteza dry erase lapboards and the Arteza Pouring Acrylics really are. Before I begin, I just want to explain that today's video isn't a tutorial in how to use pouring acrylics. This is actually one of my first attempts with this medium. I have tried it in the past without great results because I struggled with mixing the paints to the right consistency, and I've got to say I gave up very quickly. So that's why these ready mixed paints worked so well for me, because I didn't have to worry about all the mixing, and so they were perfect. So this video is just to show you how well the paints perform with the dry erase lapboards and how forgiving the lapboards are, because I made lots of mistakes, as people do when they're first learning with something, but you can wipe the mistakes off, and that's the beauty of using the lapboards instead of a canvas. You can just wipe it all away and do something else in that area. So yeah, that's what today's video is about. So as you will have seen, I've just poured some of the paints in layers into my cup, and I'm literally just doing a ring pour onto the dry erase lapboard, and I haven't done anything to the lapboard. It hasn't been sanded or anything. It's just straight out of the box, and I'm just pouring the paint straight onto it. The consistency of the paint I would kind of describe as like double cream. It's fairly thick, but just the right thickness to flow nicely. I don't really have much to compare it with because I'm a beginner with this, but I do like the thickness of it. I just had good control over it. It didn't flow away too quickly. So yeah, it wasn't too thick and it wasn't too thin, and it worked well for me. Another thing I discovered about these paints is that the colours stay quite separate, and that was really good because when I did try it a couple of years ago doing this kind of thing, I found that the colours would get muddy, and these colours don't seem to get muddy. They really keep quite separate. Yeah, so I was really pleased about that. I do need to learn about which order to pour my colours into my cup to find out what works best. I think there is a skill to that. As you can see, I've got way too much of the dark blue in there, but I don't know, I still like it. It's amazing really, because I had a few different attempts with the same colours. There's 8 colours in the box, and I tried it in all different orders, and all with the same colours in, but just in different orders. And the difference in the results just from, changing the order of the colours is amazing. I can really see why people get completely hooked on this art form. It really is so satisfying because everything you do is it's a mystery. You can have a plan in your head, just the same as with resin art. You have your plan in your head, but it doesn't work out like that. It's always quite exciting to see what's going to happen. So yeah, I think I could quite easily get addicted to this. Now, one question I'm sure you're all asking yourself in your head as you're watching is, well, if it's going onto a non-porous surface, surely that paint is just going to peel off. And yet, you are absolutely right. It would just peel off. So if you're using the dry erase lapboards, once the paint has completely dry, you will need to do a coat of resin over the top, going over the edges of the board to keep that paint on the board. That is, unless you're going to frame it, because of course these boards are so thin they can go into a picture frame really nicely, so you can frame your artwork behind glass, and then of course you won't need the resin. So once my piece was finished and dried, I decided I didn't really like it as one whole piece. I liked one side more than the other, and so what I decided to do was cut it in half, which I did here just with a knife and a ruler, and I then covered it in resin and made it into a journal. The beauty of working with the dry erase lapboards is that after your piece is finished, you have the ability to choose what you want to make from it. You can keep it as a whole piece if it looks good as a whole piece, but in this case it looked better as two pieces, so it was perfect for a journal. And as you can see here from the close-ups, those colours just look so beautiful together, and they keep nice and separate. There's no muddiness, even though you've got that bronze in there, which could have easily made it muddy, but it didn't. And I just think those colours just work absolutely perfectly together. Okay, we're on to the next one, and this one definitely didn't go the way I planned it to go. I loved part of it, but I hated the other part of it. So it was the perfect opportunity to show you how forgiving these boards are, because I wiped half of it off and made it into something else. The downfall for this one was the pink. I don't know what happened, but I just ended up with a big pink splodgy line, which I tried to rectify and I couldn't. And so the pink area is the area which got removed at the end. But as I said at the beginning, I'm learning with this. This is my first proper attempt with acrylic pouring, and I'm learning a lot from it. I was just trying out a different technique here and doing it in lines. It was an interesting result, and the bit that I kept worked out really well because it looked like half of a feather, and I really liked that. Right, so here is where I'm scraping off the paint that I didn't want. If I'd have been a little bit more forward planning, I would have collected all of the stuff that I scraped off into a cup and used it for something else, but I didn't because I'd got so frustrated with this piece and I was in such a mess. I just wanted to get it off and wipe it clean, and it does wipe clean. As you can see, I just wiped off the paint with a paper towel and I was left with the good bit. And the good bit looks really good, so I'm really pleased I didn't give up and throw it out the window, which is what I almost did. Once the paint was dry, I turned it over and I just took a tissue blade and just gently smooth it along the back of the board, and the paint just comes off really, really easily. So the clean-up process with these is perfect. You don't need to put any tape on the back. All you need to do is scrape it and it's off. I decided I wanted to use text to fill up the white area on this piece. The idea was to make it into another book cover, and I thought I'd make a book for my husband, and Valentine's Day was approaching, so I thought I'll use the words of a song, which is quite an important song to us. So I typed out the words of a song to fit the space on the board, and I printed it out with my laser printer onto the sticky back adhesive stuff. Can't think of the name of it. It's like a clear film, sticky backed film, and I'll put a link to it in the description to this video. And then I just put it onto the board, and it was a bit tricky. I'm not going to lie, it took a few attempts to get it just right, but once it was on, it filled up that white space perfectly and it made it just right for a journal cover. And of course, I did need to resin over the top of it to make it hard wearing. And that's going to be in another video, which will be coming soon, because I had some resin which had been sent and I needed to review the resin. So I decided to use that to cover this journal cover. So there will be another video if you're interested in how I add the resin over the top, that you can view separately to this video. To finish it off, before I applied the resin, I just went around the edges with gold pen, and I also separated that line and the text with some tiny little sparkly gems. I added those just as a finishing touch, and I thought they looked really pretty. And I was a bit concerned that it might be a little bit feminine, but my husband loves it, so it doesn't matter. Right, I decided to make 4 coasters from another of the whiteboards, the dry erase boards, I mean. And, well, I tried to make feathers because I'd seen it done and I thought it looked so easy, and it didn't turn out good. I didn't like the feathers that I made, and I got so frustrated. You can see from the mess that it had been a long journey of messing around with it. And I got so fed up, I thought, nah, I'm not keeping those coasters. So I just wiped it straight off. I didn't even clean the coasters. I wiped it straight off back into the cups because at this point I was at the end of my tether. I really was. I thought, oh, let's just put it back on and see what happens. And you know what? Even though I'd scraped it all off into the cup and poured it back on to the mucky coasters, they actually looked so much better. Well, I think they did. You might think that it looked better as feathers, but yeah, when I poured it back onto the coasters, it still looks really good. So it just shows you how forgiving the dry erase whiteboards are, but also how the paint, even after going through the ordeal that I put the paint through, it still managed to keep the colours pretty much separate. I mean, there was yellow and blue in there, but it hasn't really gone green. It may be a slightly greeny blue, but not much. You can still see the separation of the yellow and the blue. So that was quite a success from a failure. And I just wanted to include it in the video just to show you that, you know, sometimes it just goes completely wrong and you can still save it. Right, I don't have any footage of me making these bookmarks. What I did was I salvaged part of another pour that I did that I really didn't like most of, but I did like one end of it. So all I did was I cut it up into, how many? Let's just look, 6, 6 bookmarks. And, you know, that's another thing that I managed to salvage from a failed pour. So, in conclusion, what did I think to the Arteza pouring paints? Well, I've got to say, I really, really did love them. And I'm not just saying that because they sent me them for free. I absolutely love those paints and I would love to have another go with them and get a little bit more experience. They were just perfect for me because I didn't have to worry about getting the mixing consistency and the ingredients right. So, and they dried really nice and shiny as well. The only thing that I would say about the techniques that I've done today using the dry erase whiteboards is it's not ideal if you don't want to put resin on. If you don't use epoxy resin at all, you might not want to use the dry erase whiteboards unless you're putting them in a picture frame. But with the epoxy resin, they do work absolutely fantastic. One other thing I would say about the paints is I didn't see any cells. So if you want cells to appear, you would need to have some additive like silicone or whatever you use. I didn't find that there were any cells appearing. But other than that, absolutely 10 out of 10 from me. So if you've been wondering whether ready mixed acrylic pouring paints are worth purchasing, I hope I've opened your eyes and encouraged you to take the plunge yourself, because they really are so good, because you don't have to worry about mixing them yourselves, and the colour range is just perfect. And they do all different sets with different colour options. This was the pastel set and I loved it. So yeah, I hope I've encouraged you to have a go. If you've enjoyed the video and you haven't already subscribed, I would love it if you could do that for me. It really helps my channel to grow. And I will see you again very soon. Bye for now.